Okay, guys, we're going to be going over your workouts and your videos from Wednesday from your workout 2. This was pause squats, a pressing movement, and a rowing movement for you guys. So for Jake, this is what yours was looking like, and then for Nick, this was yours. So we'll go through the videos now. So the first thing that we're going to go through is going to be your squat, Jake. How you're handling your rack position. This is going to be pretty similar to what Nick is doing. You guys have some of the same problems, so we'll work through those. Now, essentially what I need you to do in short is to bring your hands in and to get your upper back a little bit tighter. So this is you at depth. This is the frame for it. The knees are out, toes are out, hips are down. The eyeballs seem to be pointed down about right there. This is perfect. I have no complaints about this. Now, what we need to pay attention to is that the bar is going to be shifting down our back, so down vertically down our back during the set. What I need you to do is I need to bring your hands in laterally, and then that's going to get your upper back a little bit tighter. So next workout, bring them in about 1.5 fingers width, and then we'll play with it and then see how it affects the position. Your wrists are in a little bit of extension right now. So if extension is cocking them back, and then flexion is pulling them forward, curling them forward. Yours are in a little bit too much of extension for me as of right now. I'm going to pull up a reference image for you. So this is ideally what I would like. You're kind of doing this right now. This, of course, is an exaggerated version, but his wrists are in a pretty severe amount of extension, and then he's basically just going to be relying on his torso angle so the bar can just sit on his back rather than, clasping it in. And if we look at the right image here, what he's doing is he's going to pull his shoulders behind him and put his chest out in front of him. This is kind of the cue that I want you to think about. So shoulders behind you, chest in front of you. Pretend they're two separate things and then move them to two separate locations. Now if we look at his chin as well, you see how his head is tilted a little bit up, just like yours, Jake, and then his chin is sticking out. I want you to just give yourself a nice double chin. Pull your chin down, get your head a little bit more neutral. So this is really the same thing for you, Nick, a little bit later on, but we'll run through the rest of this video. Okay, the bounce and the pause is perfect. That's really exactly what I want. No complaints there. We'll start grinding this pause squat up. Okay, so the double bounce you're doing in the pause, try to eliminate that on the pause itself just so we can get it to be a little bit stricter. I'm going to slow it down some more so you can see it. But you'll go through your pause, and then you'll do a double bounce to get your drive out of the hole. And that's abusing the stretch reflex. You're a very athletic kid, so you're going to tend to find little ways to cheat these things. But what I want you to do is just to turn it around without bouncing. That's why the weight on these is so light. But basically, we're just going to have to fix your rack position and then go from there. Let's open up Nick's squat now so that we can see pretty similar things. Okay, casual trip. Get into our rack position. Now the first thing that we need to note is that your wrists are still in extension just like Jake's. However, your thumb is around the bar this time. I want the 4 fingers and the thumb to be on the same side of the bar just like that reference image. And then I want your wrists to be in a little bit more of flexion rather than extension. That's going to let our shoulders come behind us more and our chest out in front of us, and that's going to get our rack position to be a little bit tighter. So we'll play through this. Now the bottom position of your squat, Nick, is good just like with Jake's in terms of where your knees are, where your chest is, where your back is in terms of extension. Big fan of that. We just need to work on your rack position. Okay, so, and we're here. Now I need these wrists over the bar, and you will note basically the angle between this point right here. So if we take this point and then your ribs, the shirt is kind of pulling this out, or there are your ribs right there. I need this angle to remain relatively constant. So at the top of your rep, they were flared up a little bit very high, and then at the bottom of the rep, they're a little bit too low. I need that angle to remain constant the entire time. That'll be fixed whenever we get our thumbs over the bar and we get that rack position really tight, and it'll also help whenever you have some more meat on your upper back. So. Where you're driving from is good. The only other thing I would say, just like with Jake, is that I want you to give yourself a little bit of a double chin. Pull your head back. If we'll note on these later reps, you start picking your head up as you start driving out of the hole. I want you to think about staying in your hips, so driving your hips up out of the hole. Your hip drive is good right now, but we just need to avoid the temptation to pick our head up. Your head, tends to be like between 5 to 8% of your mass. So whenever you pull your head up and back, you're going to be sitting onto your heels more. Okay, but your chest angle is fixed just from the last time. These are in a good spot. Really no other complaints about this. Jake, we're going to go on to your press now. There we go. Okay, so the big issue with this is that you're holding the bar really, really far forward of midfoot. Okay, so if we look at this distance as of right here, this frame's a little bit more blurry than the rest of them. So, okay, as basically right here, you have a center of mass between these two objects. So we have the barbell, it's weighing 115, and we have the Jake weighing maybe like 180-ish right now, I think. So essentially, there's a center of mass between the two of you. This is going to be very close to the middle of your foot. Okay. As of right now, you're holding the barbell out really far in front of you. What I want you to think about is hovering the bar physically under your chin or physically on your clavicles. Okay. You have relatively long forearms, so I won't be able to sit exactly right on your shoulder or your collarbones. But I want you to think about trying to pull it there. Now, what this is going to do, it's going to pull your shoulders back. So if you think about making wrinkles in the back of your shirt, that's a good cue. Now I'll pull up a reference image for you right here. Okay, so if we look at this guy, he also has interesting arm proportions. His upper arm is longer than his forearm by a good factor. So this is going to shove his elbows out in front a pretty decent amount. But what we need to pay attention to is the fact that right here, the bar is basically sitting right in front of his neck. So what he's going to do to clear his face is he's just going to pull his head back, give himself that double chin, lean back just a touch, and then he'll be able to press the bar in a straight line up through midfoot. So what I want you to think about is getting your elbows out in front of the bar, keeping your wrist straight just like him, and getting the bar over your midfoot, basically right on your neck. So we'll play through the rest of this, and then what I want you to watch is basically how the bar swoops back. So the bar is ending up over your midfoot, but it's starting really far forward. So you can physically see the flight path of it is coming up and around your head. Your head can move. That's totally fine. Your chest angle can change. I need the bar to press in a straight line. So if I want you pressing, 185, 225 eventually, it's going to be a function of pressing it in an exactly straight line. So we'll track it on this last rep. Okay, so right here, we'll track that point right there, and we'll see how it'll swoop back. Okay, so we'll watch that path again one more time, and we can see the outline of it now, but we're starting here forward in your midfoot, and then we're ending up at midfoot. I need it to be in that line the entire time, so all the way back. Okay, those are relatively simple fixes. Pull your shoulders back, get the bar on your neck. Nick, we're going to go over your bench now. So we'll go over your 95-pound bench. So to clarify on the schedule, if it's going to say press, that'll mean overhead press, just traditional press. And then if it'll say bench, that'll mean the horizontal bench. So this one should have been an overhead press, but this is a good time to look at your form anyway, Nick. Okay, so this position right here, I'm a big fan of it. We have our toes driving to the ground, we have our butt tight, we have our chest up, and our wrists are straight. So what I mean by that is with the squat, how they're going into extension and flexion, ideally, I want basically you to think about not having a wrist joint during your bench. I want this to be cast together. Okay, you're doing a good job of keeping your wrist straight here. The only problem I have with you with your bench is that you tend to flare your elbows a little bit more than I would like. So we'll pause at the bottom. Okay, and then now what happens here is that as we flare our elbows out, our forearms no longer get straight. Okay, so if I am right here, see how my forearm is tilted? Now imagine if I pulled my elbows in towards my side, and now my forearm would be straight again. Okay, so that's really the goal, is that I want your forearm to be straight, and we're going to pull our elbows in towards our side. Outside of that, the bench is really fine. Really not too many complaints here. And then we'll just watch it again one more time. So if we see how at the bottom the forearms are a little bit tilted, you can solve this in a number of ways. We can bring our grip out, okay, or we can move our elbows in. If we bring our grip out, our triceps are going to be a little bit more extended, and that'll take them out of the movement more than I would like. We want to get those triceps nice and strong, so we can just bring the elbows in instead. That'll make the pec work basically just as much, so we don't really have any issues there. So we'll go over the row now. I'll open up Jake's row. Jake, you did a good job with these. The only setup tip I have for you is that it's not the same setup as the deadlift. So with the deadlift, I wanted you setting up about an inch away. On the row itself, I want you setting up basically over your toes. So when you're looking down, the sight picture you should see is the bar basically right over your mid-toe before you pull, and then the rest of the setup is basically going to be exactly the same. Nick, pay attention to this. You were doing kind of the bent over row bodybuilder style out of the rack. So for this one, we're going to start off on the floor. So for the 95-pound ones that I was having you doing, you can just sit that bar on some more plates or a stack of books or something like that to elevate it so that it's a comfortable position to grab for you. But see how he has his hands overhand just like this. He's thrown his elbows up towards the ceiling. That's really what we want here. No complaints about this. Jake, we're going to drive your row up pretty heavy. So whenever you're rowing, you know, like 250, 275, deadlifts are going to be really easy to pop off the ground. There's a lot of carryover between these. Okay, and then we'll go over, Nick, your deadlift real quick. We'll try that one more time. Okay. So the big thing that I had for your deadlift is that you're setting up a little bit too far away from the bar. So now with the row, I want you setting up really over your toes. With the deadlift, I need you setting up over your midfoot. Okay, so as of right now, your shins are traveling forward a little bit too far, and then we'll be able to see that by the bar path. So the bar path, whenever this comes off the ground, it's going to swoop backwards. Okay, so I'm going to put the tracker on, and then how about we put it right there? Let's see if that plays out for me. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so you are pulling onto your heels pretty dramatically. We'll go through this one more time. So essentially what's happening is that the bar is starting forward of midfoot. You're strong enough to still break this off the ground, but it's going to become more of a problem as the weights get heavier. So what I want you to think about doing, I want you to bring your stance in a little bit for me. I want you to shove your knees out a little bit more. I want you to push your stomach down in between your thighs to get our back a little bit more flat, keeping our hips a little bit higher. But if we watch the bar path, notice how it's pulling backwards and then coming up. So that little leg right there, that little check mark, that's what we want to avoid. The next thing we want to avoid is what your head is doing. Okay, so I want your head to be anchored in time and space. I really don't want you to rotate it on the way down. Okay, so if we're going to watch it on the way down, you're going to look over to your hand. Your hand's still going to be there no matter what. No one's going to run away with it. So keep your head not rotating during the movement. But that's the same thing for really all your reps. The reference image that I have for you here is if you look at this lady. It's hard to see it on guys. A lot of times they have more mass on their back. But essentially what she's doing, so if we have stripe 1, stripe 2, and stripe 3, the bar is basically right over stripe 3. So that's perfectly at midfoot for her. Her head is anchored down, her shoulders are slightly in front of the bar, and her hips are high. What I want you to note is see how her spine is dipping down here and then coming back up. So this kind of, you know, concave shape. This is what I want for you. Right now you're starting off a little bit rounded. I need you to push your stomach down in between your legs before you start your pull. So for workout C, for you, Nick, this is new schedule, Rip Jake edition. We're going to do your 3x5 at 195 for your squat, 3x5 at 145 for your bench, and then a 1 set of 5 at 255 for your deadlift, and then chin up negatives. Be sure to get videos of those chin up negatives so I can make sure you're doing them right. Just one set is fine. And then for you, Jake, you're going to do a 3x5 at 255. I'm trying to ramp up the squat slowly because I know you got a bunch of other stuff coming up. We'll do a 3x5 at 175 for your bench, and then a 1x5 at 275 for your deadlift. For your chins, we do a 1 set to failure at 45 and then 2 sets to failure at body weight. If you do feel like doing an additional 4th day, now that you have access to, you know, big commercial gyms, basically go in there, just do some machines, do some dumbbell work, get a pump. Don't do anything, you know, excessively overly heavy. Try and be in and out of the gym, you know, within an hour. That way you're not screwing yourself up too much for Monday. I'm going to give you a relatively back heavy week, or a back loaded week. So instead of Monday being your most stressful day, it's going to be your Fridays. So you can go a little bit crazy if you want to do an optional workout D, but otherwise don't worry about it. If you guys have any questions for me, let me know. Outside of that, that really should be it. Thanks, guys.